This is my story, episode 2. In episode 1, we began in the middle of the beginning of the beginning of the beginning of whatever the beginning of this middle of the end of the story is. We began in July 2005. I'll take you back now. We'll go back in time to, let's call it, July-ish 2003. Up until that time, I think that's the time that I had just moved into with my bride of 10 years, a brand new house that I designed and built in Indian Wells, a few blocks away from my father. And I had, while we were building and waiting for that house to be finished in a rental house in Indian Wells, I think I've begun, and the new house ended the story of my life up till then. And upon reaching the end of the beginning of that part of the story, I said, my prior life is quite interesting. If there was a perspective to it, I didn't say it that way, but I said to myself, who will ever remember me? What have I really ever done? And so I decided to set about writing the future. I decided to use the format of trying to write a screenplay to imagineer a future, science fiction, that I ultimately turned into a practice that I call science faction. Where, well, what if the weird science of science was so weird that we could create our own, out of our minds, fictional creation of reality that was, well, like science fiction, way stranger than fiction, 'cause it's faction. Anyway, we're not talking factions here right now. We're not even talking fractions. We are talking about July 2003, when I set about writing the worst future I could imagine us on, titled September 11th, 2011. And at the beginning of the movie, a whole bunch of cities all over the world had already experienced a nuclear attack at the hands of Al-Qaeda, and we're waiting for our second wave. Now, of course, no good movie would just end on the movie. It would have a sequel. So that movie where my Jack tried to stop the first wave came into a sequel that I named The Bible Code Revelations. Aptly because I began using as the fictional plot the exploration of the Bible codes of the Torah. Well, in the story it was quite interesting at first. Jack was trying to stop the terrorists by finding their attacks written in the code where the future was pre-written thousands of years ago in the Bible codes, but he ultimately discovered some secrets that led him towards a quest to the Ark of the Covenant, where he would discover the meaning of our existence and God's creation of the planet. And then we'd all have peace on earth, because, well, the only way you fight Al-Qaeda is to, well, you have to win the war against war, and that's another story, but that's the biggest part of this whole story, but we'll get back to that. Okay, so, but what happened then in March of 2005, March 1st? I had already experienced, well, a code that I was sort of focused on. And that was the Bible code. You can find it in the codes. It's the sequence that says God encoded. God is truth. And for some reason, I decided to give up my creation and writing of the worst future of Earth that I could imagine. By the way, I'm talking in a voice now. I'm sorry. I come up with these accents when I'm talking my story. I'm talking my book. Your book, that's the weird thing, because if this story of science faction is real, then this book is weirder than your reality by a factor of 1,000. And, well, all of this is, like, more important than any movie you could ever see. because this is when mankind gave up war and adopted justice and peace on earth. But let's get back to that point. But it is a big part of the story because, well, that's where I got crazy. But on March 1st, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to start thinking about inventing something really big. And on the way, I thought about what are my goals, and I said I wanted to get a big monopoly. But I wouldn't be happy with one big monopoly. One must have two. And once a guy has two big monopolies, it would be hard for the world to fight his monopoly powers. But that's where it got to the point where I realized that, well, my next plan was to get a third monopoly, and then a fourth and a fifth monopoly, and so many monopolies that there would be no question that there was monopolistic power going on here, and that would have been a problem, but I was determined to go where Bill Gates could never go, where well, but no company has ever gone beyond the 500 billion mark of value to beyond the trillion. But so then they say, well, you get a startup company, you do it the old-fashioned way, you go and hire people, you get freaking recruiters, go through hiring bullshit and bullshit hiring, and well, you know what? I determined that the best way, if you have the right ideas in your head, the best way to monopolize would just be to buy all the companies out, even the companies you didn't want. Why would you buy all companies out? Why? Why would you buy all the companies out? So I offered Motorola, my alma mater, Apple, Google, IBM, Oracle, you name it in the technology industry, TiVo. I offered all of them, and even the ones we didn't need. And I'm not saying this one with Electronic Arts. Well, and the media, see all of it. I offered to buy them all out for 3 to 5 times. I continue that offer today 3 to 5 times. But it's 3 to 5 times my monetary system, not yours, and that's a bigger part of the story that comes a little bit later. But I realized if we had all of our technologies, well, and then we could create an enterprise of Earth for peace on the planet, well, we could make these technologies, we could just cancel the worst and keep the best. That means Microsoft Windows DICE. That means Apple OS X Lives. That means standards for database. Hello, Oracle. Hey, we can have competition based on standards, but the thing is, it would be our own infrastructure, and we would price to our own value. And if we gave away our own product of software for our own enterprise for free in order to make trillions and trillions in savings, we could choose to do that. We could choose to do anything when we were running the entire Earth as a common enterprise. That was a bigger part of the story. That was really what it meant when I offered to buy them for 3 to 5 times. I was offering a paradox of paradigms. Anybody that even contemplated that action would contemplate, well, especially in the context of the Fountainhead and Atlas Shark, would contemplate a new future for the planet Earth based on advancing the rate and state of arts of technologies way beyond 1, 2 to 3 orders of magnitude, 3 orders of magnitude along your path, beyond your mind today of the net present rate of change. The net present course that you're on is a course to death and destruction. That's what I learned. And there's no way to win the war, which is the only war of an injustice, the only war that will deliver economic peace and security. It's the war against all war. It's when we all turn all the cheeks and we cancel all of the nations. That's right. I offered to buy from California, from Arnold. I offered 1.5 times the value of California at about 11:30 at night on March 11th, 20
05, 2005. I offered 1.5 times California. You can't say a negative state worth minus 500 billion with its cities and counties probably doubling that. So a negative $1 trillion enterprise going down. You can't expect me to pay 3 to 5 times. Actually, I would have been happy to, because 3 to 5 times a negative would have meant, well, he would have owed me trillions to buy out California. I didn't really care. You could have the billions back. My next move for you was to take our enterprises as one enterprise under one state of no nation and succeed from a union with as many states as wanted to come with us. Hopefully them all. We'd ask George Bush to join our cause and merge the United States of California and the rest of it with China and India. And well, just California, China, and India. We've got the technology and half the markets and the labor, and we would have the world power to have the most powerful currency the world has seen. But see, we wouldn't stop it with that. We'd go to Europe and everything, because the only way we win this thing is not to fight it out in euros or dollars or this or that. Is to fight it out in one virtual infinite money I call rainbow stars. I didn't call it that back then, but I invented the idea of a technology monopoly of all technology married to a monopoly of new money. Two monopolies. See, the eyeballs. If I owned all the eyeballs. But guess what? When I say I, that's we. And that's us. So my enterprise was your enterprise. You would own your own eyeballs as part of an enterprise. And you would all have stock. You wouldn't have a voice in a political nation with politicians telling you what to do. You would have shares in an enterprise. You would be employees of an enterprise. You would be stakeholders. You would be the primary customers of the enterprise, whose job was to deliver you guaranteed total customer satisfaction. An enterprise beyond Google, way beyond the time and mind of Google. An enterprise beyond do no evil. An enterprise to do good, to rise the tides of all boats, to create an infinite prosperity for all of us. I'm getting a little bit ahead of the game. I didn't go into all that detail. In 11 days, I'd only worked on my mind. Well, 20 hours, 22 hours a day. Was sleeping 2 hours a day. That was my first, well, let's call it a manic episode. Although there were some times that I was writing software, and I think I spent some long, long nights. But usually I always got myself 5, 6 hours. But not those 11 days. And on the 12th day, I checked into where I had $1 million lot and said I'd like to have a secure place after the markets to discuss with Arnold my offer to buy California. I had never heard of a 5150 when 15 minutes later, Sheriff Hightower shows up and starts interrogating me. And I thought, well, if he took me to jail for nothing I didn't do, whether it's can't be illegal to offer to buy California, can it? I don't think so. But of course, now in retrospect, I might have been out of my mind at the time. But anyway, so he took me off. I could have talked my way out of it if I thought I was going to get a lawyer. No, I got a 5150 for the first time. I complained about the size of the back seats of the police cars. They're not very comfortable, nor are the handcuffs, nor is the treatment by grabbing your arms and dragging you around when you've done nothing other than offer to buy out a bankrupt state that is only in a state of solvency out of an illusion. It's just Greece in drag. For you know that now, but you wouldn't have understand Greece in drag back then. Spain in drag, Italy, it's all a drag. Dragged down by a debt you can never pay. A debt that I had a plan to extinguish by a monetary bank backed by all the resources of Earth, all the gold, all the oil. But let's get ahead of our game. So I got my 5150. I got a lot of sleep that time. Talked to an old guy, don't remember his name. I told him, he asked me, do I drink? And at the time I was drinking 3 big gin and tonics a night, and he said, stop drinking. Which I later on decided to stop drinking. Well, I slowed it down, because if I was buying the world for you guys, I couldn't be drinking and over drinking. And actually, I had no interest in over drinking anymore when I had a new mission and plan. And so, anyway, that's the story of the drinking. He didn't call me insane, although by all standards it must be grandiose to